My parents met in Plymouth in the 80s when they were both studying. I think they were very aware that they were maybe slightly unconventional being an interracial couple. They really encouraged us to embrace both sides of our heritage and both sides of their cultures. I mean, I am black, but I'm also white, and just because I have one parent that's black and one parent that's white doesn't mean that, for me, I have to pick. It means I can be both.
Congratulations from all of us.
But can mixed-race people really navigate both sides of their identity? Meghan Markle identifies as mixed-race, but many have still tried to pigeonhole her as white or black. Is it time that society just accepted that some people feel both?
I definitely feel very other at times. I definitely feel like I'm quite unplaceable in people's minds, and I think that makes people quite uncomfortable. Lots of people, not everyone, but feel much more comfortable when things are much more sort of clear cut. You know, you're gay, you're straight, you're white, you're black. And I've never really felt like I can be so easily defined. And I think that people do struggle with that.
But no two experiences of being mixed race are the same. 1.2 million people were recorded as mixed race in the last census. That's 1.2 million different ideas of what it means to be mixed race. Even people within the same family can have totally different feelings about their identity.
So you guys are twins, you know, you have the same background, the same parents. Why is it that you think you identify so differently?
I personally identify as mixed race. I know that some people try and identify as black or white or one or the other, but I think it's quite hard to determine, especially at a young age, where you fit in and who you are. And I think some people try and categorise you as one or the other, or you feel like you need to make a decision. But I think I got to a stage where I thought, I am mixed race, I am both black and white.
I'm slightly different. Whilst I know I'm mixed race, that's what I tick on forms, I think it's too broad a term for me, and I identify mainly as black. I think what's probably caused it is we went to very different schools. I think there were less than 10 people of colour in my whole school, and so it's kind of a cycle coming to terms with who you are. I always stuck out like a sore thumb, really, and I was always the black one, and so that's what I've grown up with, and that I'm embracing that now. I'm happy to call myself black rather than mixed race.
I had a different experience. I went to a different school to my sister, but it was predominantly white and Asian. But I felt that I had a lot, rather than feeling very much black, I think there was a lot of, but you're not black and you're not white, you're kind of somewhere in the middle. It was quite weird. Sometimes it's based on, people base those judgments on not necessarily the heritage of your parents, it's more about who they perceive you to be.
I've always had my blackness questioned, and that's always hurt quite a lot, because I feel like you're questioning my relationship with my mum and a part of who I am. So lots of times have people come up to me and say, well, we're not black really, or, you know, you're not really white, or whatever it may be, and that can be painful. Yeah, it feels like I'm being forced by people to pick a side.
Some people do just identify as white or black, and that can make the term mixed race difficult.
I don't like the term mixed race at all. I don't identify as mixed race, but I also think it's a really problematic term generally, because it reinforces the idea that both black and white, if we're talking about black and white mixed raceness, are kind of neutral and natural racial categories that exist. You can't be half white. The racial construct white was not invented to allow entrance to people who are half white. You're either white or you're not, or you're not white. So I often find it interesting and slightly irritating when people ask about choice, and they say, oh, like you're choosing, the idea that you're kind of choosing the black side and you are erasing your white side. You're not given the choice.
Mixed race people are held up as sort of this example of a post-racial society. But actually the reality is that mixed race issues and mixed race people can often be very much overlooked and misunderstood.
The rise of identity politics can mean that your background is becoming more and more important. But so much about forming your identity is about where you grew up and how you were perceived, rather than your ethnic mix.
Certainly when I was growing up, there were like a handful of other mixed people that I knew. But whereas I was quite happy to identify as black and felt really proud of being Nigerian and stuff, some of the other people, they were trying to distinguish themselves from just an ordinary black person and be like, no, but I'm half white, like I'm better than these other black people. And that's something that just makes me feel, like really uncomfortable. I don't want to try and distinguish myself from blackness to put myself that little bit closer to whiteness. And I think that's one of the reasons that I kind of so emphatically like identify as black.
I think that sometimes it can feel like, if you're mixed race, sometimes it feels like people don't understand what that means, and they don't sort of engage with it in the way that maybe you'd want them to. So sometimes it can feel like you're not really anything because you're not really seen as black and you're not really seen as white.
But I would like to be seen as both, because that is what I am. As the number of people with dual heritage grows in the UK, will we become more accepting of those, like me, who want to be seen as mixed race?